Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Yashoda Nandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashoda Nandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jai Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jai Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Shri Shri Radha Madhav ki Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Gaur Bhaktavinda ki Jai. Okay. Okay, so now we will together recite the um, introductory prayers. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Kadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Cha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So thank you again, everyone, for joining. Thank you for those who've turned on their video. Also very much appreciated. All of you are survivors. You survived to the 18th chapter, and after this chapter, you should become self-realized. So you will have read all the entire Bhagavad Gita and a great accomplishment. So today I will start with chapter 18. Can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. And there's no feedback, right?
No.
Okay, so here we are, chapter 18, conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. So this chapter is truly the conclusion, and we will see why. This is, I believe, the longest chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. Maybe chapter 2 is longer, I cannot remember, but it is one of the longest chapters of the Gita, and Krishna is summarizing the entire Gita and giving us the highest knowledge, the best knowledge, the most perfect knowledge. He's really saved the best for the last. Now, in the beginning, I mentioned to you how the first 6 chapters are there, then the second 6 chapters, and then the third 6 chapters. And I mentioned how the middle 6 chapters were the most special, because whatever is most special, people put it in the middle, like a sandwich. The tasty part goes in the middle. So the middle 6 chapters are the most special. That is true, but then in chapter 18, Krishna comes back and again gives us that most special knowledge. And as I mentioned also that throughout the Gita, it's the most special. But just as a way of, you could say, learning, it's mentioned that the middle 6 chapters are most special. So who remembers what is the main theme of the first 6 chapters? What made the middle 6 chapters the most special? Let's start with that. What made the middle 6 chapters the most special?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, is it karma? It talks about karma.
Okay, so this is the middle 6 chapters or the first?
No,
6?
sorry, middle 6 is bhakti. The first 6,
Okay.
I think, is karma.
Yes, so the first 6 chapters is karma yoga, and the second 6 chapters is bhakti yoga, and then the final 6 chapters, someone else can answer. What are they focused on?
Jnana Yoga.
Jnana Yoga.
Yes, Jnana Yoga. So in chapter 18, Krishna starts the first, substantial part of the chapter is Karma Yoga. And I divide this chapter into 3 sections. Then there's many subsections, as your study guides will show. But to keep it simple and to be able to remember it, because obviously you cannot remember, 10 different sections of a chapter. There's 3 main sections. The first 48 verses are dealing with Karma Yoga. And so the first 48 verses are Karma Yoga. Krishna is going back to the basics, so to say, and telling Arjuna that act with detachment, act while offering the results to Krishna. Then in the second section, which is a bit smaller, from text 49 to 54, Krishna is speaking about Jnana Yoga, how through knowledge we come to pure devotional service. By knowledge we can attain the Supreme. And the final section is Bhakti Yoga, which is text 55 to 78. And here Krishna openly says that this truly is the highest knowledge, what he is giving. So we should take his word seriously, and we will read those verses very carefully. And they are very, very special, you'll see. So I'll start with part 1, which is Karma Yoga. And this is the executive summary of the main theme of the Gita. Because, most of us are on the platform of Karma Yoga. So Krishna speaks about Karma Yoga a lot because that's where most people are, and that's where they need to be at. So the first 12 verses of this section on Karma Yoga is focused on acting with detachment is true renunciation and brings freedom from reaction. So acting with detachment is true renunciation. Not giving up work. Remember, Krishna talked about this before in the Gita. Not giving up work, but working in the spirit of devotion, working in the spirit of detachment. And that brings us freedom from reaction, because in this chapter, Krishna also openly says that it is not possible not to work. He says everyone must do something. The worst punishment is when, you could say the worst turmoil, is when a person feels or is made to feel that they are useless, that they don't have any role in society. They have nothing to do. And the greatest reward that we feel in our life is when we feel that we are needed, right? That someone needs us. We feel so happy. Just like, if this is the whole thing about Facebook and YouTube, right? YouTube producers, they feel very proud when 2 million people are looking at their song or their presentation or their talk or something like this. Why? Because it shows that they are needed. So action is natural to the soul. Action cannot be given up. And therefore true renunciation is offering the results to Krishna, offering the work to Krishna, and finally working in the spirit of devotion. So, as I mentioned, the first section of the 18 chapters, the first section of the 18th chapter summarizes the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga. The discussion begins by analyzing the respective positions of sannyasa and tyaga. So Arjuna begins this chapter by asking Krishna a question. Even up to this point, he is still not fully clear. And this shows that how many times we have to listen to something to understand it. Arjuna is one of the most intelligent human beings on the planet at that time. Yet he still could not fully understand it. And so here in chapter 18, he's saying, Krishna, just tell me one more time, should I not fight or should I act in devotion to you? Just please tell me which is better. He's hoping maybe at this last moment, Krishna might let him, now that he's self-realized, he might let him just give up his work, his distasteful work of having to kill others. Maybe Krishna might be kind, and maybe Krishna might say something that will get him off the hook. So he asks Krishna, what is the difference between sannyasa and tyaga? So these are two different words and very significant. We generally think sannyas and tyag to be the same thing. But Krishna, as we will see, responds saying that sannyasa is giving up work and tyaga is giving up the fruits of work. And Krishna clarifies that a true tyagi is a sannyasi. And one has to take to the path of tyaga before sannyasa. One does not have to give up activity, but must give up the fruitive mentality. One has to give up the fruitive mentality. And that is the true sannyasi. So in text 5, Krishna clarifies this point. He says that we should never renounce certain things because that is false renunciation. True renunciation or tyaga is this. This is a very famous verse of the Gita. Yagyadana tapa karma natyajam karyameva tat yagyadanam tapaschaiva pavanani manishinam. So Srila Prabhupada quoted this verse very often. So please take note of this verse. Acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up. They must be performed. Indeed, sacrifice, charity, and penance purify even the great souls. So Krishna is saying there's no point where we can say, now I'm self-realized, and therefore at this point I do not have to perform penance. I do not have to perform sacrifice. I do not have to perform charity. He's saying sacrifice, charity, and penance purify even the great souls. So even if we feel that we are a great soul, we cannot give up these three things. Even if we are a sannyasi, we cannot give up these three things. These things are for everyone. So he's telling Arjuna, he's saying, final chapter, right? It's coming to a close. He's saying, even if you are a great yogi, you still have to fight this battle. Why? Because acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance cannot be given up. And this is your penance. This is your sacrifice. So there's actually in the Mahabharata a very beautiful verse, very beautiful section where the Mahabharata describes how Arjun is compared to a Brahmana who is performing a sacrificial fire. And his bow is the ladle that the Brahmanas use. The fire is the battle itself. The mantras is his meditation on the instruction of the Lord. So like this, it goes through like this, and he says that there's no difference between Arjun fighting on the battle and the great Brahmana sitting and performing the fire yajna. Because this is his yajna, this is his sacrifice, and therefore he could not give it up. And this is true renunciation, as we will see. So then Krishna, in the purport of this verse, Prabhupada tells us and tells this point very clearly in a very, almost you could say, humorous way and a very unique way. He says, the marriage ceremony, for example, is considered to be one of the sacrifices. So we generally think of marriage as sense enjoyment. But he's saying that marriage is actually a sacrifice. And I think many people would agree. It can be very difficult at times. And so until you are married, it's very attractive to get married. But once you are married, then the sacrifice is to stay married. Then the renunciation is very easy to renounce family life and lead the life of a sense enjoyer. But renouncing that would actually not be renunciation, because the sacrifice or the difficult part is staying in the marriage, in the grahastha ashram. It is called vivaha yajna. Should a sannyasi who is in the renounced order of life and who has given up his family relations encourage the marriage ceremony? The Lord says here that any sacrifice which is meant for human welfare should never be given up. Vivaha Yagya, the marriage ceremony, is meant to regulate the human mind so that it may become peaceful for spiritual advancement. For most men, this Vivaha Yagya should be encouraged, even by persons in the renounced order of life. Sannyasis should never associate with women, but that does not mean that one who is in the lower stages of life, a young man, should not accept a wife in the marriage ceremony. So, and I make this point later on in the next slide, but might as well make it now, that Prabhupada makes the point that an attachment to an activity or attraction to a certain activity is a form of attachment, but also aversion to something is also a form of attachment. So, the point here being that after a person is in household life for 10 years or something, then that person may find it very convenient to uh, leave family life prematurely before vanaprastha comes, before the natural or the correct time comes. And that leaving a family life is not considered sannyas, because that is aversion to certain activity, which is a form of attachment. Arjuna is attached. Why is Arjuna attached? He wants to go to the forest and become a mendicant. But Arjuna is attached because he's attached not to fight. He's attached not to doing his duty. And this is a very subtle point, because we find a lot of renunciates in this world who are so-called renunciates, who are attached to leading a lazy life, not true renunciation, but a lazy renunciation, because they're attached not to do their duty, which is Arjuna's situation. Arjuna's work was not easy. One cannot say that he had an easy job. He had a very difficult work, very difficult job. But he was a responsible person, and therefore Krishna was pleased that no, it is very difficult, but I will still do it if this is my duty. In the same way, true renunciation is not whimsical renunciation. It is renunciation where one is renouncing selfish desire. One is renouncing the desire to enjoy, and if the desire to if the thing that gives us enjoyment is not doing our duty, then the devotee is willing to give up that enjoyment and perform the prescribed duty. Now here one may wonder that why is it that marriage or the Vivaha Yagya should be considered a sacrifice? Why would Krishna make this point? And the reason is because, especially we see in Kali Yuga, that to just stick with one person is a great sacrifice. It's a great yagya. And as we were reading last time in the previous chapter, Prabhupada says that is as good as celibacy, if one can regulate the mind in such a way that one is sticking with one person. And if that doesn't work, then it's not that there's no alternative in spiritual life. But if that does not work, then Prabhupada says, unless there's a special circumstance, which there are, one should not remarry. That is the sacrifice. You see, therefore Vivaha Yagya is the sacrifice, because one gets married and one experiences it, and after experiencing it, one realizes it's not the phantasmagoria that people think it is in mature life. It is just what it is. And now I've experienced it. Now I've gone through the experience. I can dedicate my life to Krishna. So separation is allowed in spiritual life. Separation is allowed in the Bhagavad Gita. But it is a yagya because one is regulating one's senses and not engaging in it again and again. One is going through the experience to purify one's existence, to purify one's desires. And hopefully, if it is successful, then one can serve the Lord. One can engage that ashram, that sacrifice in the service of the Lord. So Um, Therefore, Prabhupada in the purport makes this point that even a sannyasi, one in the renounced order of life, does not discourage young men and women to get married because acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance cannot be given up, especially at the beginning stages. Similarly, Prabhupada says, this is another quote from the purport, similarly, charity is for the purification of the heart. If charity is given to suitable persons, as described previously, it leads one to advanced spiritual life. We see that even Krishna's parents, they were the greatest devotees in the universe, the most exalted persons in the world. Even Krishna's parents gave charity to the Brahmanas, to the cows, to all the people of the village when Krishna appeared, because they felt that that was necessary for their own purification. Therefore, Krishna is saying here, right? He's saying they purify even the great souls. They knew that they were great souls, but even for their own purification, they were giving charity. Then in text 6, Krishna says, all these activities should be performed without attachment or any expectation of result. They should be performed as a matter of duty, O son of Pritha. That is my final opinion. So this is not the final section of chapter 18 where Krishna speaks of Bhakti Yoga. But still, even with the very start, Krishna is giving his final instructions to Arjun. And this verse, Yagyadana tapakarma, natyajam karyam evacha. This verse that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are is one of Krishna's very important instructions in this chapter. So then in text 7, 8, and 9, Krishna speaks about prescribed duties. This is karma yoga. Prescribed duties should never be renounced. If one gives up his prescribed duties because of illusion, such renunciation is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Anyone who gives up prescribed duties as troublesome or out of fear of bodily discomfort is said to have renounced in the mode of passion. Such action never leads to the elevation of renunciation. So Krishna here is describing duties or the giving up of duties in the different modes. So if one gives up duties because it's out of illusion, oh, I should give this up and become a saint, that is in the mode of ignorance. If one gives up his prescribed duties because truly they're so difficult and they try really hard but they just can't keep doing it, then that is in the mode of passion. And then finally, text 9, O Arjuna, when one performs his prescribed duty only because it ought to be done and renounces all material association and all attachment to the fruit, his renunciation is said to be in the mode of goodness. So when we renounce attachment to the fruit of that activity, then that is the time when we can actually perform one's prescribed duty without any disturbance. One can do it consistently, only at that time. Why? Because there will always be success and failure in the performance of one's prescribed duty, right? There's always going to be success and failure. So when the failure comes, then we will renounce our duty if we are attached to the fruit of that activity. But if we are not attached to the fruit, then success or failure, happiness or distress, honor or dishonor, all of those will be all the same for us. And therefore it is only the devotee who can be steady in their work because they are situated on the platform of goodness. Then Krishna in the next 3 verses speaks about renunciation in the modes of nature. Text 10, the intelligent renouncer situated in the mode of goodness, neither hateful of inauspicious work, nor attached to auspicious work, has no doubts about work. So those situated in the mode of goodness is not hateful of inauspicious work. Very interesting point. Like I was mentioning, aversion to a certain activity is a form of attachment. So Arjuna's activity is inauspicious, although it is auspicious in the sense that it is for Krishna, but it's inauspicious because it involves killing. It's something very troublesome, very painful to engage in, but uh, he should not be hateful of his work, his duty, nor attached to auspicious work. It is indeed impossible for an embodied being to give up all activities, but so here is where Krishna says it. It is indeed impossible for an embodied being to give up activities, but he who renounces the fruits of action is called one who has truly renounced. For one who is not renounced, the threefold fruits of action, desirable, undesirable, and mixed, accrue after death. But those who are in the renounced order of life have no such result to suffer or enjoy. So when we give up the fruits of action, that is, we act in the spirit of devotion, then there is no reaction. But in any other way, when we act, then there will be desirable, undesirable, and mixed reactions. And one has to suffer or enjoy those in one's next life. So true renunciation is acting for Krishna. It's acting in a way that pleases the Lord. Samsiddhir haritoshana. Whatever the success of one's activity can be judged not by how good or bad it is, but by how much the Lord is pleased. That is the success of one's activity. So if we perform a very big endeavor for the Lord, and the entire endeavor is a complete failure, then from the physical point of view, that activity may be a complete failure. But if Krishna is pleased by our effort, then that activity can be a complete success. You see, they're two separate things. And sometimes even very mature devotees, even very advanced devotees, make the mistake of combining the two. That, this project, this temple, this effort was unsuccessful. And therefore my service or my effort to Krishna was unsuccessful. Maybe, but not necessarily. The effort may be unsuccessful, but Krishna's satisfaction may be there, and therefore the effort is successful in that way. So we have to modify our definition, our standard for what is success and failure. And the perfect example of this is Srila Prabhupada, where initially when he translated the Bhagavad Gita, he translated the entire Gita with purpose. Then his one copy was sold apparently by his wife for a box of biscuits. She didn't know, or maybe accidentally or purposefully, but he lost the entire translation. Years of work. Imagine if that happened to us. Would we think that Krishna is pleased with us? And would we think that Krishna wants us to translate the Bhagavad Gita if that happened to us? But after that happened, Srila Prabhupada, almost immediately after that, started translating the Gita all over again. Because he could understand that Krishna was pleased by his effort. Krishna wanted him to do it one more time. And there's no success or failure. The only measure of success was Krishna's satisfaction. This is what Krishna wanted him to do through his spiritual master. He knew that, and therefore he did it. I mean, we could be, someone could be really truly confused in such a situation. But there was no confusion for him because he knew this is what my guru wants me to do. This is the instruction that I received from my self-realized spiritual master. And so, as many times as it takes, I will translate the Bhagavad Gita. And so here we have it. We have his second translation that he wrote the second time. So the key point here is that it is impossible to give up activities, but it is possible to give up the attachment to the fruits. Very key point. And this is what can be our own meditation that I have to do. As we will see more, Krishna actually expands on this more. I'm driven by my nature. So I have to act in a certain way and do certain things, but I can give the fruits to Krishna. So then Krishna really goes in depth and he describes us what are the factors in a person's action. So now he's getting into the consciousness of how we should act. And we can act in the right consciousness when we know who all is involved in something happening. Understanding that one is merely one of the 5 factors of action and that the supersoul is the main factor, a person will follow the dictation of the supersoul. Such action is liberating. So a very key point here is that Krishna now speaks of 5 factors of action. Let's see what they are. So the 5 causes for the accomplishment of all action. 1, the place of action. So our atmosphere, our location is a major factor in an activity becoming successful or unsuccessful. People travel to great universities or to places of pilgrimage to get the right atmosphere to become successful. So the place of action, like in the Gita, it is Kurukshetra, Dharmakshetra. It is a sacred place where they are fighting. And therefore, it's predicted that the Pandavas will be victorious. Because why? Duryodhana chose the wrong place. It was a holy place. And so therefore, it would influence Arjuna favorably. In the same way, the holy places, why are they so nice? Because they are places that are, so to say, access points to the spiritual world. The place itself is surcharged with Krishna's devotion, and therefore that atmosphere affects us spiritually. So the place of action is very important, adhishtanam. Then the second one is the performer. The performer's desire is very key to an activity happening or not happening. The soul whose desires bring about bodily activity. The soul desires, and therefore the soul is responsible. Then the third factor in any action are the senses. So the senses are what are performing the activities for us. The fourth one is the endeavor. So we have desires, but unless we endeavor, unless we make an effort to fulfill those desires, they will not, the senses will not move. And the final cause of action, the ultimate cause, you could say the permitter of any action is the super soul, that is Daivam, that is the Lord. So in the next verses, Krishna says, whatever right or wrong action a man performs by body, mind, or speech is caused by these 5 factors. Therefore, one who thinks himself the only doer, not considering the 5 factors, is certainly not very intelligent and cannot see things as they are. So, if we think that we are the only doer, if we think that everything is happening due to our effort, then we are not very intelligent. Krishna is saying this. We have to understand that some of the credit or loss is ours, but ultimately there are other factors that make us successful or unsuccessful. The ultimate factor being the mercy of the Lord. And then Krishna further dissects action. So we said there's 5 factors or causes for every action. And then there's factors that motivate action. 3 factors: knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower. So for anything, to get motivated for any action, there has to be the knower, this person. There has to be knowledge. Without knowledge, why will we perform any activity? And there has to be the object of knowledge, something that we want to know about. And then there's 3 constituents of action: the senses, the work, and the doer. So for any activity, the senses are involved, the activity itself is there, and the person performing the activity is also there. And then the main, you could say, substance of this chapter, the main section of this chapter is back to the modes, the 3 modes of material nature. So chapter 18 is a continuation of our previous chapters, and Krishna continues that discussion here, where then he describes activity in the 3 modes of material nature. All our activities are conditioned by these 3 modes. And therefore, again, Krishna is trying to tell us to see it in this vision. Look at everything through the lens of the 3 modes of material nature. What is happening in the world is happening according to the modes. And so he talks about knowledge in the 3 modes. He talks about work in the 3 modes. He talks about the worker in the 3 modes. He talks about understanding in the 3 modes, determination in the 3 modes, and happiness in the 3 modes. Knowledge, work, the worker, understanding, determination, and happiness. All of these in the 3 modes of material nature. So I'm not going to go through all of these because you can read them. They're very straightforward. Just maybe the last one, happiness, I can mention. That Krishna says that happiness in the mode of goodness is what is poison in the beginning, but nectar at the end. So happiness in the mode of goodness is not easy happiness. It's poison in the beginning, very difficult, but it's nectar at the end. Austerities are there, but those same austerities turn into nectar. Happiness in the mode of passion, Krishna says, is nectar in the beginning, but poison at the end. And for this, Prabhupada actually gives the example of illicit sex life. Very pleasurable in the beginning, but poisonous at the end. Very bad results. So that is happiness in the mode of passion. And happiness in the mode of ignorance is poison in the beginning and poison at the end. It's due to a very low taste. There is no pleasure, but it's pain in the beginning, pain in the end. Like meat eating, right? It's very troublesome, very horrible to eat meat, tasteless, putrid. And it later on also causes so many health problems. So it's happiness in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance is described in this way. In the same way, Krishna goes through all of these things and describes these things in the different modes of nature. Then after that large section, which we have just briefly touched on, you can read it in your own time. Then Krishna says, there's many topics in chapter 18, so that's why we're just going through them, step by step, in very short. Krishna says, worshipping the Lord through one's occupational work is true renunciation and brings freedom from reactions. So Krishna now turns to the point that we all have our occupational duty. And worshipping the Lord through our occupation is actually pleasing to Krishna. It's not selfish, it's not materialistic, but It's actually what Krishna wants us to do most of the time. That is true renunciation, and it brings freedom from reactions. By utilizing one's karmic propensities in the dutiful service of the Lord through varnashrama, one will advance toward liberation. So we have to utilize our skills in the service of the Lord. As I mentioned one time before also, it's not just that we serve the Lord. When we go to the temple, we all wash pots and we clean the dishes, we clean the floors. But also it's important that if we're a lawyer, we engage our legal skills to serve the Lord. If we are a businessman, we engage our business skills to advertise the spiritual books and distribute books. If we are a doctor, we use our skills to treat the devotees. So using our occupational work in the service of the Lord, that brings about true renunciation. Like there's a very nice devotee that I know, he's a CPA. And CPAs, they earn a lot and they have high charges. But for temples, he gives his service free of charge. And it's so helpful because, when you have a temple, it's like all of these, financial things and taxes. And it's like a major thing, all the legal stuff you have to take care of. And it's so pricey, and he saves the temples thousands of dollars, and even more so through his you have someone you can trust, he's a devotee, through his CPA work, and he's helping the devotees in a way that he could not do otherwise by other services, but he's utilizing his skills in the service of the Lord, in the service of the Lord and the devotees. We can help devotees. If we're a car mechanic, if they have a problem with their car, we can help them. So like this, this is the perfection of our activities. Krishna says in text 40, there's no being existing either here or among the demigods in the higher planetary systems, which is freed from these three modes born of material nature. So everyone is born in a certain mode of nature. And that mode of natures, those modes of nature are further cultivated by our environment, by our training, by our education. One's born with certain natures. And therefore, one has to identify that nature and work accordingly, because Krishna is saying everyone has a certain nature. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are distinguished by the qualities born of their own natures in accordance with the material modes, O chastiser of the enemy. So note here in this translation, Krishna is saying that these qualities are born of our own nature. He's not saying that these qualities are born at the time of birth, or our birth, so to say, our birth in a certain family determines our nature. No, he's saying the qualities are born of our nature. So whatever nature we cultivate, our qualities will be of that nature. And part of that nature is given to us at birth. You can see that in small children. I can see that. I have two children, and they're so different. And they have the same environment. We love them in the same way, but they're very different in their nature. So there's something that we come with, our past samskaras. And then there's also nurture, based upon how we get nurtured by our environment, by our parents, by our education. That also modifies our nature. So there's nature and nurture. And according to our nature and our nurture, we get a certain varna. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he says that one can pretty much identify one's nature in the ages of 17 to 21, he says. So note, he doesn't say right at birth, because it's not all determined at our birth, that are we a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. It is also determined based upon our association, our education, our training. So ages of 17 to 21, one can recognize this is what my nature is. This is what I like to do. And then one has to work according to that nature. So Krishna is very practical. Krishna conscious philosophy is very applicable, because it's not in a la la land. It's not in the clouds. Okay, yeah, just do anything, serve Krishna in any way, because Krishna knows that we'll make a mess of it. If we just try to do everything and anything, we make a mess of it. We will just be uh, we won't be expert at what we do. So Krishna is saying that we can serve the Lord according to the qualities that we develop. So then he defines it. He defines what are the qualities of the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and Shudras, and accordingly their work. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the natural qualities by which the Brahmanas work. Heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, and leadership are the natural qualities of work for the Kshatriyas. Farming, cow protection, and business are the natural work for the Vaishyas. And for the Shudras, there are labor and service to others. So these are the qualities. And it's interesting, actually, I misspoke. Krishna doesn't describe the work of these varnas, but he describes the qualities here. Because actually the qualities are most important in determining our varna. The mode of our work might be different, but really it's the qualities that determine which varna we are in. And this is the case because based upon our qualities, we will be very effective in a certain type of work and very ineffective in another type of work. And based upon our qualities, certain qualities will be an asset, will be a strength for certain types of work, and those same qualities will be a weakness in other types of work. So to give you an example, just like some people, you notice they have an ego, a big ego. Like they have this like Ishwar Bhav, like I said it, so I said it. This is what it is. And generally we don't like it when people are like that, right? We're like, okay, don't have such a big ego, be flexible. But the fact is some people have that nature. Now, such a person, if they become, a teacher or, a priest, it won't work so well because teaching and mentorship and care, it means being flexible. You have to understand the other person. You have to teach according to their needs, their qualities. If such a person becomes an employee, they become a Shudra, it won't work because they'll get into an argument with their boss overnight. It's just a fact. To be an employee, you have to be a bit humble. You have to, just listen and follow oftentimes. So that quality is a weakness. But if one is in a position of leadership, Kshatriya, then that quality of self-confidence, sort of a slight stubbornness in one's ideas, one's opinions, a real drive, sort of an ambition for fulfilling one's dreams, that is an asset for a person in the position of leadership. Because when a person is in leadership, then there's so many opinions. There's like 30 people at least that they're leading, right? Maybe 100, and everyone has their own opinion. And how can something go forward? Well, ultimately, you have to follow someone's opinion. You have to, there has to be one person who's saying, no, this is the way it's going to be, and I'm going to do this. And this is how the car is going to go forward. So that quality, which is a weakness in other varnas, can be a strength for the Kshatriya. To fight in battle takes a lot of courage, strength of heart. So, of course, the Kshatriya also has to be benevolent. The Kshatriya has to be kind. But the point being that when we see someone, it really changed my outlook. That when we see someone we may think, oh, he's such a bad person. But when we understand the varnas and different natures that people have according to the modes of nature, then we can see them and understand, oh no, this person is not necessarily a bad person. They're just good for a certain activity, right? They are effective for certain things. And now all of a sudden, from being bad, they are good for a certain varna. We can understand, okay, they're in the wrong ashram. Sorry, in the wrong varna. They're doing the wrong thing. They're not meant for this type of work. They're here, and they're making a whole ruckus because it's not natural for them to be in this atmosphere. They should be a leader or a warrior. Someone is very, very, strong in their nature and very tough to deal with. It's perfect for a warrior because in battle you have to be like that. So they should become a policeman or a security guard or warrior. So that person is not necessarily bad. It's that they have the nature of a kshatriya. In the same way, another person, like they're very indecisive. And sometimes I've met people like this, very frustrating to deal with. They're always very indecisive. Well, for them, it's not necessarily that they're a bad person. The activity of a Shudra is good because a Shudra is a follower. Their nature is such that they don't like to make decisions themselves, they like to follow. I'm actually a little bit like this, right? I was like, you know, I always wanted my older brother to make the decision for me, and he would complain to me. It's it's the nature of some people. They like others to you know take the lead. So these are the different qualities of the different persons. Although every activity has faults, one should not use this as an excuse to take up another's occupation. This is a very important point that Krishna makes twice in the Gita. So every varna will have its shortcomings, and every person who's performing activities in that varna will have mistakes, and every activity will have mistakes. But just because there's a shortcoming there, one should still act according to one's nature. One should not act differently. In each of the four varnas, one must perform some acts which are contaminated by material nature. This is inevitable. But by performing one's occupational duties for the Lord's service, all the defects become purified. So also every varna is contaminating. Any activity that we do, it will be contaminating. Therefore, it's so important for us to do it for the Lord, so eventually we become purified. A wonderful example of this is Maharaj Yudhishthir. Maharaj Yudhishthir in the Mahabharata, there's a section where he's lamenting to Lord Krishna. He says that our Kshatriya Varna is so horrible. We become prosperous, he says, by slaughtering others, by cutting off the heads and arms of others. He means war, battle. And how abominable is this Varna? He tells Krishna, I wish I was not born as a Kshatriya. I wish my Varna was not a Kshatriya. And this is what Arjuna here is thinking. But by serving the Lord, that nature of a warrior can be purified. Of course, again, with great care. We cannot misunderstand these statements. Here Krishna is speaking about the Kshatriya who goes into battle simply for the benefit of others, simply out of duty to protect the weak. In the same way, the occupation of the Vaishya is very contaminating because always money, business. It's very hard. I mean, it's a fact when you're thinking about money and business, how to focus the mind on Krishna. But you must, because it is your mode of work, but one can do it for Krishna. So this is very important. One can understand what one's nature is based upon the activity that one can sustain over a long period of time. This is a easy way to understand, okay, what is my nature? Because in the chat box, I noticed there's a question. How is one's nature? Well, the nature is that thing which one can do and feel very satisfied and do it for a long period of time. If we're acting against our nature, we won't be able to do it for very long. because it's not our nature. We can do it for some time, make a big show, but then ultimately it will destroy us. And this is why it's so important point it is here. Krishna again and again is making this point in the Gita, that even if you're good at doing it, don't do someone else's occupation, do your own occupation. Because we'll do it really well, but then we will fall on our face because it won't be natural to us. I've had this experience in my own life that if something was not natural for me, I could do it very well for some time, but ultimately I would get very frustrated because it was not natural to me. But if I did what I was natural, there are so many shortcomings and failures, but I found it very interesting. I still would keep on doing it, keep on doing it. So what we like to do, that is our nature. That's basically the point. Whatever we like to do, not just for 5 minutes, but we can sustain. We can sustain for a long period of time. Over the years, we can see, okay, this is what I always come back to. This is what I always end up doing. That is our nature. So this was section 1. Section 2 and 3 are much shorter. So I will get through these rather quickly, and then we will have questions and answers and discussion. Section 2 is from Jnana Yoga to pure devotional service, Bhakti Yoga. So Jnana Yoga, again, Krishna's back to his qualities. And I was just reminded, I completely forgot last week. I'm very sorry, Prabhu. Param Karuna Prabhu was going to give us a little rundown of the places in the Gita where Krishna talks about the qualities, which he does basically almost in every chapter. So here it is again for our meditation and for our application. So actually, I was thinking, Param Karuna Prabhu, maybe at the end of the class, if you have time, Prabhu, you could share that with us. So hopefully you may be able to. If not, that's okay.
Sure, Prabhuji, I'll be happy
you
to.
Can. Okay, Prabhu. Thank you. So text 51 to 53. Being purified by his intelligence and controlling the mind with determination. Giving up the objects of sense gratification. Being freed from attachment and hatred. One who lives in a secluded place. Who eats little. Who controls his body, mind, and power of speech. Who is always in trance. And who is detached. Free from false ego, false strength, false pride, lust, anger, and acceptance of material things. Free from false proprietorship and peaceful. Such a person is certainly elevated to the position of self-realization. Then in the next verse, Krishna says, one who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed toward every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. So I was actually just listening to a class by His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, and he was saying that how the great sages, they even though this age of Kali Yuga is so fallen, it is the most fallen age, but they glorify the age of Kali Yuga. Because in this age of Kali, by the simple process of chanting the holy names, one can attain the Lord very easily, very quickly. What would take thousands of years in previous lifetimes, one can attain in the course of just 30, 40 years. So the great sages, they praise this age because it is such a easy process to attain the Lord. At the same time, he said, relatively speaking, Krishna consciousness is also a very gradual process. It is also a gradual process, a step-by-step process. So on one hand, one can come to the platform of pure devotional service by Krishna's mercy, by engaging Bhakti Yoga. But on the other hand, this verse here is saying that once we are equally disposed to every living entity, when we don't lament or desire anything, then we can attain pure devotional service to Krishna. So on one hand, there's no qualification, but on the other hand, there is a qualification. Who gets pure devotion? Not someone who is terrorizing others, who is very cruel to other living beings, but no, someone who is kind and equally disposed toward every living entity. They see friend and enemy to be the same. They are impartial. They never desire material things. Very difficult to get these qualities. But Krishna is saying if we develop them, we get pure devotional service. Devotional service helps us get these qualities, and these qualities help us become pure devotees. So now the second section is already over, very short. This is Jnana Yoga. Krishna said, these are the items of knowledge. Again, it's very interesting that the items of knowledge are qualities of behavior. So qualities of behavior or character are actually items of knowledge. And now in section 3, the final section, the conclusion of the Gita, this is for our meditation, for our repetition, very important. One must act in devotion, following Krishna's dictation. If one does not act, one will undoubtedly act in illusion. So these final verses can be memorized, actually, all these verses. Text 55. One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me, by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. This verse, Krishna drives home the point of bhakti. Bhaktya mam abhijanati. One can understand me as I am only by devotional service. And through that devotion, one enters into the kingdom of God. Though engaged in all kinds of activities, my pure devotee, under my protection, reaches the eternal and imperishable abode by my grace. In all activities, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. So now from Karma Yoga, Krishna has moved on to Bhakti Yoga. And he's saying that, okay, perform your activity, offer the results to me, but also depend upon me. We must depend upon Krishna. And this image that I have here, I put this here because these are the wives of Krishna who were incarcerated by the great demon. I think it was Shankachuda who incarcerated them. There's 16,000 wives. And Krishna comes and these were all princesses from the entire universe, that he was such a great demon. He would go to every kingdom and steal their girls. And he would bring them and put them in his palace. He wanted basically all the beautiful women in the universe. Narakasur. Thank you, Mataji. So, so he was Narakasur, and so these women were not, you could say, pure from the material point of view because a demon had taken them, and who knows what he had done with them. So Krishna, when he kills Narakasur, he releases all the gopis, all the wives, not gopis. These were the 16,000 wives of Krishna. And when he releases them, then, he's giving them freedom and happiness. No longer are they in prison by this horrible demon. But then they all go to Krishna and they say that you've released us, but we're still going to lead a miserable life. Why is that? Because no one is going to marry us. We were kidnapped by a demon. And so at that time in Vedic culture, if a woman had already been in association with another man, then no man would marry her. It was just the culture. It still is the culture in sort of Vedic societies. And so they were very concerned that now who will marry us? And so Prabhupada, he says in a lecture, very, very sweetly, he says, Krishna said, come on, I'll marry all of you. So Krishna then accepts all of them, all 16,000 wives. And so therefore Krishna has 16,108 wives. He is actually not being a sense enjoyer, But out of his mercy, he was accepting his devotees, these queens who were depending upon the Lord. And then each one of them, he gave them a palace. Each one of them, he expanded himself and he gave them their own husband, who was Krishna. And so Prabhupada says, if you can do this, no problem, marry 16,000 wives. And if you cannot do this, then don't criticize Krishna. Because Krishna does this, but he does it perfectly. So it's not just enough to offer the results of our activities to Krishna, but we must depend upon Krishna. And that is Bhakti Yoga. When we're performing our activities, offering the results to Krishna, and also depending upon Krishna for the success of that activity or for the fulfillment of that service, then that becomes Bhakti Yoga. Because we have taken Krishna's grace, we are under his shelter, under Krishna's protection. The devotee accepts the protection of Krishna. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. So bhakti means working, but working in devotion, meaning working while being conscious of Krishna, always Krishna conscious. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. If you do not act according to my direction and do not fight, then you will be falsely directed. By your nature, you will be engaged in warfare. So here, now Krishna's kind of bringing the different points together, and he's saying that your nature is of a warrior, and if you don't act according to my direction, you still will fight, but you'll fight in the wrong way. So therefore, follow my direction. Be conscious of what I want. Do it for my pleasure. That's Krishna's ultimate instruction. Not because it's a righteous war, or because this is your duty, but ultimately act out of love for Krishna. Do it for me, for my pleasure, and then you will be properly situated. Under illusion, you are now declining to act according to my direction, but compelled by the work born of your own nature, you will act all the same. So this was the unique quality of the gopis, which you're seeing here, that they were always conscious of Krishna. They could never forget Krishna. And this is why they were so exalted. They're always remembering Krishna's pastimes, always chanting his holy names. So Krishna's ultimate instruction is not just karma yoga, performing our varnashram duty for Krishna. That is important, that is very good and necessary. But his ultimate instruction is doing those activities, but in full Krishna consciousness, full absorption of Krishna. So now a very famous verse, which shows that every living being has his free will, and after giving his instruction, Krishna is leaving the decision up to Krishna, up to Arjuna. Iti te jnanam akhyatam guhya guhya taram maya vim srijyata dasheshena yathechasi tatha kuru. Thus I've explained to you knowledge still more confidential. Deliberate on this fully, and then do what you wish to do. So Krishna here is telling Arjuna, now do what you wish to do. The decision still is yours. I can give you the advice, I can give you the direction, but do as you wish to do. And here Krishna is giving a very important instruction to us also. He's teaching us by example that this is the way how we should mentor others. Mentorship does not mean controlling those we mentor. Mentorship means we give the instruction, but then the person can do what they wish to do. Everything is voluntary in spiritual life. Nothing can be forced. So Krishna tells in the last chapter, well, these are the consequences. You're going to be lost. You're going to be misdirected if you act differently. But still, he says, right after that, he says, but still, do what you wish to do. I'm not going to force you. And this is the meaning of bhakti. This is the meaning of love and devotion. This is why Krishna made the material world, because he doesn't force it on us. He wants us to come to him out of our own love, out of our own heart. Sarvaguhyatamam bhuya shunu me paramam vacha ishtusi me didam miti tato vakshami te hitam. Well, you might think that now Krishna is done, the Gita is over, but Krishna now says that, well, now I will tell you what I have not told you at any time before. This is Sarva Guhyatamam. So Krishna already gave Guhyatamam. He already gave confidential instructions, right? Chapter 9, so many times, chapter 10, chapter 11, chapter 12. But this is Sarva Guhyatamam. It is most confidential. And then you say, well, so many things confidential. No, Paramam Vacha. This is the supreme instruction, what I'm going to tell you now. This is Paramam Vacha. Parama means highest words. These are my highest words. And so therefore, um, uh, you must hear this from me for your own benefit. And why am I telling you this? Because you only tell people who very confidential things, who you really love. Krishna is saying, because I really love you. So it must be true knowledge. Because Krishna is telling this to his friend, who is Arjuna. You're my very dear friend. Krishna mentioned in the Gita, for many lifetimes you've been my very dear friend. Right? Nara and Narayana. Arjuna and Krishna. So what is that instruction? Here it is. Next two verses are Krishna's finale, his most highest paramam vacha, highest instruction. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. So always think of me, become my devotee, and worship me, and offer your homage unto me. These four things Krishna says. Note that this verse is almost exactly repeated in chapter 9. It's also one of the few verses that Krishna repeats twice, few instructions that he gives twice. So here he says it's the highest instruction, and he's also saying it for the second time. So how important it is to worship Krishna, to think of Krishna, to offer homage to Krishna, to become the devotee of Krishna. And then we will come to Krishna without fail. Krishna is promising. And then his final instruction, Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam braja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshaishyami ma shrucha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. So someone may say that I cannot surrender to Krishna. I cannot think of Krishna. I cannot worship Krishna. My mind, it's like in India we say it is like gobar. It is just like mud. My mind is not working. I cannot think of Krishna. I cannot worship Krishna. I'm unclean. I'm not regulated, so I cannot worship Krishna. We may feel like this. So Krishna says, no problem. Just surrender unto me, and I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. In the purport to this verse, Prabhupada says that one may be very concerned about his sinful reactions, and we should be concerned. What will be the reaction be? How will I get free from my papa, from my sins? But Krishna is saying, do not worry, I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions if you surrender to me. So therefore, the path of the Gita, many people say, is the path of works. Oh, the path of the Gita is the path of Karma Yoga, the path of works. But no, that is not true. The path of the Gita is the path of grace. Ultimately, it is the path of grace, that we surrender to Krishna, and Krishna frees us by his grace, by his mercy. And finally, Krishna is making the point here that we have to give up all other varieties of religion. We have to give up these false conceptions of religion, false religions, and just surrender to Krishna. So Ramanujacharya, this is what he taught, prapatti or surrender. This is the official doctrine of the Sri Vaishnava tradition. Just surrender to Krishna. And the bhakti process that we also follow is actually more like prapatti. Because to actually do bhakti to the Lord takes a lot of qualification. We don't have pure devotion for the Lord. So we do bhakti yoga and we say that we do bhakti yoga, but our process, which is the same, it's all the Vaishnava process. Vaishnavism is one and the same. What Lord Chaitanya taught is also prapatti, or surrender to Krishna. Because we are begging the Lord every time we chant, Krishna, please accept me. Please take me under your shelter. I am your servant. So this is the process of surrender. And Krishna is promising us that he will free us from all sinful reactions and take us back home, back to Godhead. And then after telling this final ultimate instruction, and after speaking the entire Bhagavad Gita, Krishna then says a few verses about the result of sharing this knowledge with others. If this knowledge is paramam vacha, if it's the highest words, then what happens when we share this knowledge? This confidential knowledge may never be explained to those who are not austere, or devoted, or engaged in devotional service, nor to one who is envious of me. So Krishna is saying, well, don't share it to certain types of people. And I'll come back to this, why he's saying this. Text 68, for one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end, he will come back to me. So, if one explains the supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end, he will come back to me. And then the famous verse, Nachatatsmat manusheshu kashid me priyakritama bhavita nachame tasman anya priyataro bhuvi. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. So Krishna is here saying, if we share it with the devotees, we become Krishna's most dear servant. No one is more dear to Krishna than someone who gives his message to others. At the same time, he's saying, don't give it to certain people. So who are these people who are not austere, or devoted, or engaged in devotional service, or who are envious of the Lord? Prabhupada says that these are the unscrupulous commentators of the Bhagavad Gita. There's 700 commentaries of the Gita. These are the people who take Krishna's words and they use it for personal profit. They take Krishna's words and they mess it up and they misguide people on the wrong path. Why? Because they're envious of Krishna. They say Krishna is not God. After reading the whole Gita, reading Bhakti again and again, they say Krishna is actually just a human being. And they deny the form of the Lord. They deny the activities and qualities of the Lord. So this knowledge should not be given to them because they do harm. Because they use the Gita to misguide people. Like Prabhupada used to say, he said, if you have some other philosophy, then you teach it. What is the problem? Teach it all over the world. But he used to tell, he said, but why are you using the Gita as the basis of your nonsensical philosophy? The Bhagavad Gita has so much fame, so you're using it to base your own philosophy. But that is the misuse of the Gita. Why are you using the Gita? He says, just teach your philosophy. So these are the types of people that should not be taught or given this knowledge because they misuse it. Just like some of the most intelligent people sometimes perform the most heinous activities. They say the smart terrorists, right? The terrorists who are, the PhDs from Harvard, or very intelligent people, but they use it for the wrong purpose. So that education is misused. That education should not be given to them because they use that education for the wrong purpose. It's the same idea here. Everyone should be educated about the knowledge about Gita. Everyone should be given this spiritual knowledge, but not to someone who is envious and who will misuse it. Of course, the caveat of this is that the devotee is so merciful, Prabhupada says, that they will share it even with those who are envious of the Lord or who are not qualified, because they're even more merciful than the Lord. And Krishna appreciates that mood. Krishna will not punish us for doing that. The devotee will even try to change the heart of the envious, because the devotee is more kind than Krishna. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada, he shared it with the whole world. He gave it to every person. He did not see who is qualified and who is not. And that's why he was the greatest devotee of the Lord. That's why there's no servant in this world more dear than Srila Prabhupada, because through his purports, he is explaining it to us. Otherwise, how would we have known this spiritual science? We would have misunderstood it. We would have read some other nonsensical translation and completely missed the point. So many translations, but no one became a devotee of the Lord because the devotee did not explain it. So therefore, Prabhupada is the most dear servant of the Lord because he shared it with all of us. And then finally, the result of studying Bhagavad Gita. So all of us, what do we gain by studying the Gita? And I declare that he who studies this sacred conversation of ours worships me by his intelligence. And one who listens with faith and without envy becomes free from sinful reactions and attains to the auspicious planets where the pious dwell. O son of Pritha, O conqueror of wealth, have you heard this with an attentive mind? And are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled? So, reading the Gita, studying the Gita is worshipping Krishna by one's intelligence. And then, if we listen to it with faith and without envy, we become free from papa, free from sins. So we have to remember this. If not that we sin on the strength of the Gita, but if we do something wrong accidentally, then we should read the Gita as a way of atoning for it. You could say as a way of purifying our existence. One time I made a major blunder in deity worship. I accidentally, dropped the deity or something. It was many years ago, and so I made a big mistake. And so my Guru Maharaj told me to read a chapter from the Bhagavad Gita as a way of, asking forgiveness for the reaction, because the reaction would be very strong. So, it frees one from sinful reactions. It's not just that we get knowledge; it also purifies our heart. And then the second part is attains to the auspicious planets where the pious dwell. Why isn't Krishna saying to the spiritual world? Why the auspicious planets where the pious dwell? Well, in the purport, Prabhupada explains that if one does not attain the state of pure devotion, if one is still on the path, but if one reads the Bhagavad Gita, one will still go to the planets of the sages, which is Dhruvalok, before going to the spiritual world. So the result of just listening, even if our heart is not fully purified, is that we go to the planets of the sages. Where from there we go to the spiritual world. But the point is that we may not go immediately, but we basically become liberated. This is what it means. So then after this question that Krishna asked him, he says, so innocently he asked Arjuna, are you now clear in mind? Can we finally stop? So Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I've regained my memory by your mercy. I am now firm and free from doubt, and am prepared to act according to your instructions. So he is the ideal disciple. He's giving the perfect example of the perfect disciple. Like Krishna is giving the example of the perfect guru, Arjuna is the perfect disciple. I am prepared to act according to your instructions. And he says, regain my memory. So our memory is lost when we are in nescience. And spiritual life, spiritual realization is reviving our spiritual consciousness, our remembrance of Krishna, our memory of Krishna that we have forgotten. So then the final three verses are said by Sanjay, who is the speaker, who is the narrator of the Gita to Dhritarashtra. Sanjay said, thus have I heard the conversation of two great souls, Krishna and Arjuna. And so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end. O king, as I repeatedly recall this wondrous and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I take pleasure being thrilled at every moment. O king, as I remember the wonderful form of Lord Krishna, I am struck with wonder more and more, and I rejoice again and again. So this is the result of hearing Bhagavad Gita with a pure heart, in the way that Sanjay did. And I have to also mention in the purport for 1866, Sarvadharman Parityaja, and 1865, Manmana Bhavaman Bhakto, in both purports, Prabhupada mentions how we should meditate on the beauty of Krishna. We should meditate on the form of Krishna. It's amazing why Prabhupada says this. He says, remembering Krishna, Manmana, means focusing on the beauty of the Lord. Surrender to Krishna means remembering the form and beauty of the Lord. And here Sanjay is saying that, he heard this whole conversation, but his mind is going back to the wonderful form of Krishna. He's being thrilled at every moment by remembering their dialogue and also remembering Krishna's beauty and his form. And he's struck with wonder. So Prabhupada is saying this is actually the process. We have to become attached to the form of Krishna, to the beauty of Krishna. And then his final verse, the last verse of the Gita, Yatra Yogeshvaro Krishna, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara, Tatra Shir Vijayo Bhutir, Dhruvanitir Matir Mama. Yatra Yogeshvaro Krishna, Yatra Partha Dhanurdhara, Tatra Shir Vijayo Bhutir, Dhruvanitir Matir Mama. Wherever there's Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there's Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion. So, wherever the Lord is present, and wherever the Lord's devotee is present, everything is wonderful there. Everything. And so therefore the only lacking in our life is the lacking of Krishna. Because if Krishna is there, then everything else comes as the servants follow the master. Opulence, victory, extraordinary power and morality, that will be present. Sanjay has told Dhritarashtra now that, sir, you forget it. Arjuna and Krishna are going to win this battle. The Pandavas will win. The Kauravas will lose, because he says victory and extraordinary power are present wherever Krishna is present. Therefore, the devotee is the one who is always victorious. Though the devotee may be not victorious, but the devotee is actually victorious if the devotee is associating with Krishna. And the most wonderful example of this is of Vritasura in the Bhagavatam, where Vritasura is killed by Indra, but because he is a great devotee of the Lord, Vritasura gains liberation. But Indra still has to suffer and enjoy in the material world. And he tells Indra, he tells him that actually the victory is mine. He tells Indra that either way I will be victorious. If I win you in the battle, I will be victorious. And if I lose, then I know that I'm going back to the spiritual world. So that will be a great benediction that you will give me, because then I will go back to Krishna and I will be truly victorious. So devotee is always victorious. He can never be a failure. If the devotee is victorious, they'll be victorious. But even if the devotee loses, the devotee goes back home, back to Godhead. The devotee gets the mercy of Krishna, the shelter and the mercy of the Lord. So the Lord must be there, and the Lord's devotee must be there, and then everything is all auspicious. So I'll stop at this point. Thank you very much for your very kind attention. And what we can do, I was thinking that due to one service that I have to leave in half an hour. So I was thinking maybe first I can take some questions, and then after that we can uh, hear Param Karuna Prabhu's description of the qualities in the Bhagavad Gita, the description of the qualities in the Bhagavad Gita. This way, in case I have to leave, um, Prabhu and all of you can continue, and then we can come back. So um, please ask your questions. Again, I just have 30 minutes today, so please keep the questions short. And also, if you have any final questions before our exam, which is I will send out to your mentors, to your proctors um, towards the end of this week. I need time to make the exam, so please give me some time for that. But I will send that out. So from chapter 18 or anything before the exam, I know some of you texted me and I during the week, and I mentioned that in the class I would answer those questions. So you can ask those also. Okay, Ambika Mataji, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare
So
Krishna.
the very wonderful class, and I don't want to take a lot of time, so I will be quick. So when we were on the slide and we were discussing the different nature or qualities of, Brahmana, Vaishya, and all the four varnashram system. That is for most likely the people who are not following devotional service. They are not on path of devotional service, but and especially if once you are trying to be a devotee or on path of the devotional service, I mean, we all do this. We all have combination of different qualities, like qualities from shudra to brahmana, or combination of that. So do we really have to be very focused on all these qualities and try to figure out what is our nature, at this point, or should we just focus on the devotional service? That's one part. And especially the children who are growing up in krishna consciousness, a lot of us, they are born in a devotee family. So for them, how should we cultivate or trying to identify their qualities and engage them according to their nature for their occupation?
Yes, very nice question. Prabhupada in the Gita says that a pure devotee can 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 perform the activity of the kshatriya or the brahmana or any of the varnas. So for the pure devotee, first and foremost, there are no varnas. The devotee is beyond that. Although they may still, just to set an example for others, they may still act in a certain varna, as Arjuna is doing. Uh, for societal reasons, they may do that, but they're not obliged to. For those who are not pure devotees, they, if they act in their varna, their spiritual life and their activities will become easier. That is the point. So rather than walking uphill, they're walking downhill. So they have to walk and they have to walk towards Krishna, but it becomes, rather than an uphill battle, a downhill battle. So this is the benefit in trying to understand what our nature is and serving Krishna according to our nature. It doesn't have to be like that, and we also have to be willing to serve Krishna against our nature. We cannot be, like you're saying, we cannot be too stuck up that, okay, this is my nature, I won't do anything else. Because in the service of the Lord, we're acting out of love, out of bhakti, out of devotion. So out of love, we will do things that are maybe not in our nature, but for Krishna. But in general, in terms of our occupation, what we do full time, we should do it according to our nature, because that is something that we can very easily engage in the Lord's service. Just like one boy. Now speaking of youth, you were saying he was very energetic and um, strong and kind of fighting in nature. So so he was given pujari service, but he didn't last very long. And now he's a policeman and he's a devotee and he's very happy. So so it's just like it just won't work. That's the reality. That's the practical reality. So if we want to serve Krishna and make it work, we have to do it according to our nature until we are a pure devotee, until we come to that.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Yeah. Just one quick thing before the next question. So on 10th and 17th, we won't have class. Um, this coming week, while I'm writing the exam, it will be time for you to complete chapter 18 and all your homeworks. And so on the you can take it earlier. I'll send it out because I know some people have made arrangements of where they are. I will give the exam, by the 8th or 9th to your proctor. Um, but you can take the exam 17th, 18th. You can give yourself like 2 full weeks to prepare for it, or even later. Just take it before the 24th, because our next class will be on the 24th. So 24th of April is when we start Nectar of Devotion. That's our next book. So if you don't have a copy of the Nectar Devotion, get the Nectar Devotion. I'll give you the study guide. I'll email it to you. But you must have a copy of the book. Of course, it's online also. But 24th, we'll start the Nectar Devotion. Nectar Devotion is my favorite book. Most devotees say that it's their favorite book in Bhakti Shastri. So whatever you do, don't miss this one. It's the most nectarian book, I think, in this Bhakti Shastri. So that's starting April 24th. So if you're planning some vacation or something, you can go 10th and the 17th, and then please be back on the 24th. So that'll be nice. Okay, wonderful. Pushpanjali Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you so much for teaching Bhagavad Gita. So grateful. It's an overall question for all Bhagavad Gita or general bhakti. Sometimes I get confused at what I think it should be the result of, being a bhakta. Sometimes seems to be the prerequisite. Like for example, like modes of nature. Sometimes I feel that I have to overcome the modes now to be able to do the service that's expected of me. The same thing of qualities. But sometimes I feel that those should come if I have some devotion or some taste for chanting, that so it feels very confusing that all the qualities or the things I'm supposed to have now, I thought that they would come later, but so please.
Yes, these modes are actually very deep in our heart, and it's very hard to get rid of them. And that's why Krishna gives us this process of purifying our work by engaging it in the service of the Lord. So your struggle, meaning struggle, is not just your struggle. We all are struggling with the same thing. It's very difficult. Even great sannyasis, they sometimes struggle with anger. And, they mention this, and that's there because of just past samskaras that are still getting purified. The anarthas can stay up to the stage of bhava, Krishna says. Up to the stage of bhava, one can still have anarthas in the heart. So the main thing is that we are aware of them and we're striving to free ourselves. That is the main thing. So by being aware of them, we can. I'm not the modes. I'm not goodness. I'm not passion. I'm not ignorance. I'm beyond this. I don't have to be controlled by my modes. I don't have to be controlled by anger, greed, lust, anger, all these things. So yes.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Very nice. Champakalata Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for such a wonderful session. And I'm so happy that successfully we all finished 18 chapter. So Prabhu, I have this question. When you say fruits of action should be given to Krishna and renunciation. So in practical life on daily basis, we do so many actions from buying groceries to cooking to everything. Now cooking, we understand we offer, but in general terms and practical terms, how do we mold our mind and explain ourselves to say, okay, I'm offering fruits of every action to Krishna. So how can we do that on practical level and come to a real renunciation? If you can help.
Yes. Actually, there's one purport in this chapter where Prabhupada says one should mold one's life in such a way that 24 hours a day one can think of Krishna and perform activities for Krishna. So it's not that, like you're saying, it's not that we are conscious at every moment that we're doing everything for Krishna, but the point is that we don't do anything unless it is in some ways related with Krishna. So the point is like our goal in all activities is to be Krishna conscious. So therefore, everything becomes Krishna conscious. So like for example, at work, right? We can be at work and we will not remember Krishna at every moment while we're, let's say writing a computer program or whatever people do. So while they're doing that, they may not remember Krishna directly, but they are remembering that I'm doing this work for the satisfaction of Krishna. But they know that. So there's actually a place where Prabhupada says this, where although consciously one is not remembering Krishna, because one's solving that problem at that moment. So your mind is, let's say on the circuit board, or if you're a plumber on the pipes or something like this. But the consciousness is fixed on Krishna. That I'm doing this under the instruction of Krishna, for the pleasure of Krishna. And anything that's not for the pleasure of Krishna, such as watching Bollywood films or Hollywood films, that I won't do. So I'm doing this on the instruction of Krishna, because Krishna is saying in the Gita that do your occupational duty, but do it for me. So that's how we are always fixed in that consciousness.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Nice question. Kalavati Gopi Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the lovely class today. I had a question regarding text 66. So where Krishna says, abandon all varieties of religion. So when Krishna spoke this, all the man-made religions didn't exist. So I'm just wondering what exactly he meant when he says, give up all varieties or religions. Thank you.
That's actually a very nice question, actually, because Prabhupada translates it in a way that we can understand it, right? His audience. And Krishna spoke it using certain words that Prabhupada is telling us, the meaning of. And so the exact word that Krishna uses is dharma. Krishna says, give up all the different dharmas, which is very interesting because varnashrama is also a dharma, varnashram dharma. So Krishna's ultimate instruction is that give up even your duties, your dharma as a husband, or your dharma as a wife, your dharma as as a warrior, your dharma as a mercantile person. Give that all up, and of course your different man-made dharmas as of today, the different religions that we make, and just surrender unto me. Now, of course, the dharma, the surrender to Krishna itself may involve doing our dharma for Krishna, right? So if Krishna says, surrender unto me, and then he tells Arjuna, go and fight, perform your prescribed duty and go and fight, then he is doing his dharma for Krishna. But Krishna's point is that give it up. And just give up your dharma. It's not necessary to do that, and just surrender unto me. So what's important is the surrender, and part of that surrender is doing our prescribed duty until we become a pure devotee, or even when we become a pure devotee. Part of that is doing our dharma, but we're not doing the dharma for the sake of dharma. Like Maharaj Yudhishthira, for example, he wanted to be truthful for the sake of being truthful. And Krishna told him, no, give that up and speak the lie because I'm telling you to do so. So that's giving up dharma and surrendering to Krishna. Now, in normal circumstance, surrender to Krishna means saying the truth, because that's what Krishna says. That's what he tells us to do. So, yes.
Thank you. Very nice explanation. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Very nice question. Kapil Sharma Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
First off, on behalf of everyone, thank you so much. These 18 weeks are, like, I'll remember these 18 weekends forever. So, there were weeks where the impression was that this is the first time we are reading this Bhagavad Gita, or maybe that Gita that we were reading was a completely different Gita. So first off, thank you so much, Prabhu. Prabhu, question is, are there any rituals or practices that you follow that make sure that we continue to read the philosophy, and not only read the philosophy that comes from Bhagavad Gita as it is, but also focus on the application? Because the one thing that the biggest struggle is, we read and then we'll are in the association of great devotees, but then there are times where we are not in association and there are a lot of other things that take priorities. So are there any practices, rituals that you follow or people in your close congregation follows that could be beneficial for all of us? And to very briefly, if you can also tell us in the part of the exam, I know that there is a focus on essay as well as the memorization, but can you also summarize that?
Yes. So for the first question, um, I mean, Prabhupada has given us the process. You see, so Prabhupada is given us the process, and we are just trying to follow Srila Prabhupada's process. So there's nothing special that I do or someone else may do, which may be different. The process is perfect, and the Gita itself is telling us the process, right? Manmana bhavavan bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru, and so the key thing is that we have to be reminded of that process again and again. And one thing that can help, if we can do it, and I say this without practicing myself every day, is that we can try to read a chapter of the Gita every day. And we can read it without the purports, because obviously we don't have so much time. It would be nice to do it with the purports, but at least just the translations. And if we read just the translations, reading a chapter takes about 10 minutes. It takes exactly about 10 minutes for most chapters. Some longer chapters, 15 minutes. So one thing that many devotees do, I know like Vaisheshika Prabhu does, and many of his followers and the whole, you could say a group of devotees who are taking instruction from him, is they read a chapter of the Gita every day. And that can be a very nice meditation. Many people in India, they do it with the shlokas. But I don't think reading the shlokas every day is as effective. Again, it's very, very nice, but it's not as effective as reading the translations. Because when we read the translations, we get the meaning, we get the heart of the Gita. So that's in terms of practice. And then in terms of the exam, yes, so there'll be one essay question in which you'll summarize the entire Gita, which is just a key point from each chapter. This way you have the picture of the Gita in your mind, which is very important, because see, intelligence in Kali Yuga is not having the knowledge, but knowing where the knowledge is, right? So actually some great soul said this, I forget who it was, that in Satyug you have the knowledge. In Kali Yuga, the intelligence is knowing where the knowledge is. And that's what intelligent people are. They know, how to access it. So we have to remember the structure of the Gita. So that's the essay question. And then we have the verses, which I mentioned. I'll give you the topic and you write down the verse. And then we have multiple choice questions. And those, like I said, I still have to make them, there could be 40 or 50, whatever it takes just to go over them. And those questions will be directly from your homework. So in your homework, you're answering in an essay format. I'll just ask you the same questions or similar questions in multiple choice format. So the process is very simple. It's the homework, knowing the homework and knowing the verses, and preparing that essay question.
Thank you so much. To make it further, and to make it more easy for you, you can also CC us when you are sending the questions to our mentors. We can make it very easy for you.
Well,
Hare Krishna, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yes. Actually, the purpose is not to tax our brains, because Prabhupada did not like that. He said the exams should be just to encourage the students, not to tax people's brains. This is a direct instruction from Srila Prabhupada. So the intention is to make the exam easy, and the intention is just to make sure that we have a reason to do the homework, because everyone, does the homework the week before the exam. So that's, don't feel bad if you're in that situation. Just rise to the situation. Okay, I'm behind, but I've done this before. I can do this now also. I'll just study for 1 week continuously and learn the Gita. It's okay. That's how we learn. That's it's a crash course on the Gita. So the best is those of you who have been doing it every week. I mean, you're the best. But even if you haven't, it's okay.
Thank you.
Swati Mataji?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the wonderful session. Prabhuji, my question is around the renunciation of, fruits of your actions. Now, if you're being treated unfairly at work, for example, and you worked hard for something or whatever it is, so how do you renounce the fruit? Is it that you don't stand up for yourself, or you still stand, because you do get upset and things like that? So how do you practically apply it, which is also, I think, similar to what Champak Lata Mataji had asked?
Yes, because ultimately we do judge something by the fruit, right? That's your question. So we can judge it by the fruit for Krishna. So like, of course, we have to measure our success by the fruit. Let's say we organize a program, a Bhakti Yoga program, and one person comes up. So, well, the fruit doesn't matter. It's just the service to the Lord. Well, that is true, but if we were really trying to serve the Lord nicely, we would do it in a way that people come or it's successful or like this. So, the residents of Vrindavan are also very intent on getting the results of their activities. But the result is not for them, it is for Krishna. It is for Krishna. So, so that's how we can reapply the tendency to want success in our work, to want the fruit of our work. Okay, fruit is there, and I am getting the fruit, but this fruit I'm going to engage it in Krishna's service. So even if at that time I don't remember Krishna always, but we're doing something, right? So whatever I'm doing, I'll do it for Krishna, and that is our success.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you. Sulba Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare
Actually, the journey we did, like you kind of made us do, was amazing. Thank you is not enough. But what we can do is, we can spread the word as much as we can. That's what Prabhupada wants and Krishna wants. So I'll try to do that. I have a confusion actually. So Krishna mentioned two different things in 67 and 68. So with limited knowledge, definitely I'm not able to find out who is the devotee, whom should I reveal or not. So is it okay if I follow only the 68 instruction instead of 67? Because maybe sometime if by judging with my limited knowledge, I may commit some aparadha that I think, okay, he is or she is not devotee, and I will not reveal Bhagavad Gita knowledge to him. So what do you advise on that? I have one more question, but I'll stop here, and I would like you to put a light on that.
Yes. So you're saying if you follow text 68, which is explaining the secret to the devotees, but not to the non-devotees, is that okay? So if you explain the Gita to the devotees but not to the non-devotees, is that okay? That's your question. Okay.
Yeah, but with my limited knowledge, I'm not able to know, right? Maybe he is devotee, but I'm looking fault in him or her. So I'm not the right person to say that, okay, he is devotee or non-devotee.
Yes. So
non-devotee actually. I can see devotee in, yeah.
Yes. Very good point. So we know someone who is envious, and we may shy away from explaining to them. When we share the knowledge with them, but they become very angry or argumentative, then we can understand, okay, they're not ready for this knowledge. I have to give them prasadam. So it's actually true what Krishna is saying. We, even in our own process of bhakti, we don't start directly with the Gita many times. We say, okay, this person is very, you could say, is being very inimical. So give them some Krishna prasad to soften their heart before speaking Gita. And this is what Krishna is saying. So to answer your question, we give it to everyone. But if someone is becoming very angry and very argumentative, then we can understand, okay, he's envious of Krishna because he's not taking this knowledge. So now I will first soften his heart through holy name, through prasadam, and then try again later. Yes, Because you're right, we cannot know who's a devotee. Sometimes someone walking on the street may be actually a great devotee, very devotional in their heart. So this is also true in book distribution. Devotees go out distributing books, and then some people reject them, some people accept them, other people really accept them. So depending on how they reciprocate, the devotee is able to give them a book. And those who are very envious, they don't accept it. They just don't. And the devotee does not force them, but rather waits for them to turn around.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Divya,
Can I
Mataji?
go with second question, or I should?
Maybe let's get through these questions since it's getting
Yeah.
late.
Yeah.
Divya Mataji?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much Prabhuji. It feels so great that last book we have done with your association, and finally we have read the Bhagavad Gita through it was because of you only, Prabhuji. Yeah.
Well, for you it was the last book. For some others it's the first book.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah. Prabhuji, I had a question with regarding to exams. So, Prabhuji, how much time we have been given allotted to complete the exam, and is it necessary to write it down, or we can type it, or?
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't think of these. So I believe the exam is 3 hours, but it's 3 hours, but hopefully it won't take that long. And then as far as typing it might be difficult to type the verses. But yeah, I guess because I know it's hard for people to write that much these days, myself included. Like, I'm not used to writing. I'm more used to typing. So we can do typing also. Yeah, as long as your proctor agrees, and there's no notes on the computer, and they're sort of watching you. Yeah, sure, why not? And that's all of you are honest, but just to have the same standard for everyone. Therefore, we have this policy.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah. Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah. So, Prabhuji, so full 27 verses we need to just memorize and just type it, and you'll be asking questions of all 27 verses, or
Yes.
there will be any.
Yes.
Yes.
It'll be easier actually for you that way. This way, you need to know all 27. So, yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Prabhuji, and in this connection also, so we have not submitted the registration form. So when is the last date to submit the registration form? Because our temple president was not well, so now he has recovered. So what is the last?
Yeah, as soon as possible, because now is the main time when I need them. When I send the exam, then the registration form should also be there. So as soon as possible, whenever it's possible. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Kishore Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dhanapram, Gurudev.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Prabhuji, like, say, Mata asked question, like, the verses, right? Like, do we need to type, like, let's say we have, like, on top of your line, right? Like, we need to write, we may not able to type in the same way as in the book, right?
So you will not be able to do the diacritics, right? The diacritic markings will not be there. But everything else you can type. So actually, yeah, you can type the verses also. Like, let's say it's man mana bhava bhakto. You type in man mana bhava man bhakto, but you would just be missing the markings, which is okay. I mean, anyway, even if you write by hand, I don't think most people will remember that. Basic idea is there. Basic. It's obvious you know the verse. There's some spelling mistake, something that's okay. No problem. You're muted, Prabhu. You're muted.
This probably the exam dates, probably like by when you want to finish submit this exam, like.
So here, let me give you a firm date. So we're going to start Nectar Devotion by the 24th. So the firm date when you have to finish the exam, and they should send it to me. You're done, finished, everything is the 23rd of April.
23rd. Yeah. Okay.
because then, I mean, you won't have homework until the 24th. That's when we start nectar devotion. Then if you're done with the Gita, then 24th you can now focus completely on the next book.
Okay.
In
So,
exceptional circumstances, I can even be lax on that. You can even take the exam the following week while you're doing nectar devotion. But I don't think it's good for the students or for me. It's best if we try to finish one book before we start the next.
okay. So, like, my temple, when we referred me, like, Prabhuji is, he's busy. Then can I get, examined by other brahmachari from the temple?
As long as the temple president authorizes it.
Okay.
So if he says yes, the brahmachari can do it, then it's okay. So it just, yeah. I mean, the main thing is that we, whoever is like kind of, that's what Bhakti Shastri says. That's what the board says is the authorities should know that you're taking it, and they should just be aware. But they can assign it to anyone. That's fine.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Okay, Prabhuji. So thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. And here, last question. Yeah, Gopal Govinda.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I'll just keep it quick, short. I just have a request that the first section, the multiple choice questions. So let's say if you are planning to put 50 questions, maybe if you can put give an option like do 50 out of 60 questions, then we have a little bit higher chances.
Well, see, the thing is that the pass rate is 70%, and so that's 70%, and so if I make it too easy, then people won't study the homework. That's the problem. So already it's multiple choice, so it'll be easy. So the problem also is how to make so many questions. So you have the wavelength at 30 points to play with. Of course, and the people who study very hard, they also have an impetus, because if you get above 90%, you get it with honors. So it's actually written on your certificate, Bhakti Shastri with honors. So that is an impetus for those who want to study very hard, and those who are, enjoying their studies and a bit lax, they can get above 70% and still pass.
So we can help you with the questions if you want.
Yes, well, actually, that's a great idea. Ask everyone to send a question, one question, and then I'll have the whole, But yes. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for your very kind attention. Any other questions? You can put it in the chat, and I can try to answer them. Now we will hear from Param Karuna Prabhu. You can please, Prabhu, give us the rundown of these qualities in the Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhu, at a certain point, I may just go to audio. The whole session is recorded, so I may, if I miss it, I may listen later, but please take your time, and we are greatly eager to hear you.
Sure, Prabhuji. Can I share a slide? I just made one slide with.
Yes.
I think, yeah, sharing is allowed.
Yes.
Okay. Can you see this, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhu, it's coming.
So I just made one slide, Prabhuji, and saintly qualities in Bhagavad Gita.
Wow.
So, and I have just given a little description also of what is being mentioned there. So these are the ones I could find, and maybe there are more that I may have missed. So please correct me. So in chapter 5, which is action in Krishna consciousness, Lord Krishna is mentioning the qualities of a self-realized person. So that's what I have mentioned as qualities of a jnani. So these are the qualities exhibited by a person when he is already at the stage of samadarshinaha, or seeing everyone equally and in a non-dual way, free from illusion. So there we will see the verses like 5.18, like Vidya Vinay Sampanne Brahmane Gavi Hastini Shuni Chaiva Sopakecha Brahm Pandita Samadarshinaha. So he sees all of the living entities as the same. And similarly, the next few verses are of a similar nature. Then in chapter 6, again, Lord Krishna is describing the qualities of a jnani, goes from the beginner stage, yoga rudha, to a yoga, I forget, to a yoga rudha stage. Arudha means the higher one, and the lower one, I'm forgetting what was the name.
Ruruksha.
Ruruksha, yes. Ruruksha and Arudha stage. So in the Ruruksha stage, the qualities again, the beginner at the Jnani level, one who sees the friend and enemy, honor and dishonor, stones and pebbles as the same. So again, these are the qualities of a self-realized person. Then in chapter 10, where Krishna is speaking the verses, the first 7 verses before the Chaturshloki, there the main emphasis is that these are the that Krishna is the source of everything, and that's what he summarizes in the beginning of the 10th of the Chaturshloki with Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, that everything comes from me. So in these 2 verses, he is summarizing a whole bunch of qualities that are coming from him, and some of these, and that's why I have not put this in the bold font. The rest are all divine qualities, or qualities that are desirable, even though some of them may be very hard to obtain, even at the jnani stage, like seeing everybody equally, even a friend and enemy, and honor and dishonor. Whereas in this one, these are just the various qualities of living entities that are sourced from Lord Krishna. So this includes certain, so to say, undesirable things like fear and death and infamy. So, but there are mostly, it is all the good qualities that are coming from Krishna, like truthfulness, control of senses, control of the mind, happiness, non-violence, equanimity. All those are mentioned here in the 10th chapter as well. But Krishna is the source of good and bad everything. Then we come to chapter 12, and in that there is the whole third section of the chapter, from 13th to 20th verse, where Krishna is describing all the qualities that endear a devotee to Krishna. So there he is describing these in eight different verses, and he ends every single verse by saying, such a devotee is very dear to me, or Mad Bhakta Same Priya, that such a devotee is very dear to me. And especially the 12.18th verse is summarizing the qualities in the Jnani stage, which have been described in the previous verses. Then in the 13th chapter, Lord Krishna is describing what is knowledge. And knowledge is being a person of these kind of qualities. Such a person is endowed with the transcendental knowledge, and all these wonderful qualities are being mentioned by Lord Krishna in these 5 verses, 8 to 12, and there are so many nice qualities that are there. And that is what Krishna declares as knowledge. So this is in the context of what is knowledge, but essentially Lord Krishna is talking about what are the qualities of the knowledgeable person. And then oops, did I lose the sharing?
Yes, Prabhu. Somehow the screen went.
Okay.
Share it again.
Okay, it should come back. So then in the 14th chapter, Lord Krishna is talking about transcending the gunas. And right before the verse where Lord Krishna talks about Mam Chayo Vyabhicharena Bhakti Yogena Sevaya, that one should engage fully and undeviatedly in Bhakti Yoga, he talks about all these qualities of a person who has transcended the modes of material nature. So all the qualities are mentioned again here. These are all also at a level where one has transcended the modes, which means one is self-realized and one has freed himself from the entanglement of the modes. Then in 15.5, again, similarly, Lord Krishna mentions these qualities of a transcendental person. And such a person, Lord Krishna says, knows how to surrender to the Supreme Person and attain to the eternal kingdom. So now comes the qualities in 16.1, which are of divine divine people of in the mode of goodness. So many of these qualities are, this is the divine and demoniac natures chapter, and Lord Krishna talks about the 26 divine qualities of people either in the top of the mode of goodness or just transcending the modes, the material modes, including the mode of goodness. So these are all the good qualities that we should aspire to develop. Then in 18.42, Lord Krishna is describing the natures of the various varnas, and this verse 18.42 is summarizing the qualities of all the brahmanas. So these are all the nice qualities that one should try to develop and try to become of brahminical nature. And then finally in the 18th chapter, right before the verse of Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma Nashotati na Kankshati, before that there are these three verses that describe the Brahma Bhuta stage, where Lord Krishna is describing all the qualities of a self-realized person, one who is ready, or who is ready to enter into the Brahma Bhuta stage, where he says, that Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate, that one is qualified for self-realization with these qualities. So these are also the qualities of a Jnani. So yes, Prabhuji, that was it from my side. Is Gopal Hari Prabhuji still here?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, yes. Thank you very much, Prabhu. It is I love this slide that you made. I made a copy of it actually. And
Sure.
it really does touch on all of the places where Krishna speaks of this. And so it's very, very wonderful. And thank you for explaining it so nicely.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share, Prabhuji.
Thank you. And we are eager to hear more from you. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. So good luck studying for the exam. And we will see each other again on April 24th. In the meantime, you can text me or email me if you have any questions. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna,
Prabhuji,
Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you so
Prabhuji, one
much.
request.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Gopal Hari Prabhuji, one quick request. Once you have emailed the exam to the proctor, can you send us an email or a WhatsApp that exam has been mailed?
Yes.
So that we can follow up with them?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it might be hard for me to do for everyone. If there's any doubt, if there's any question, you can contact me and say, have you emailed it or not? I will email it
I'm assuming you will email to all the proctors in one shot through a single email or something like that.
Yes. So I'll put it on the WhatsApp group that I've sent.
Yeah. Once you have sent that one email, if you can let us know, because I don't want to follow up with our proctor too many times. Have you got the exam? Have you got the exam? Like that. So once you let us know that the exam has been mailed, then I know that they would have got it, and I can check with them that,
Sure.
you know,
Yes.
to set up the exact time of, you know, doing the exam with them, because we will know that they have received it.
Yeah. Okay, Prabhu.
And Prabhu, once we finish the exam, we just click a picture and send it to you in the email in front of the proctor?
No, Mataji. I mentioned in the chat group that I'll need it in like PDF format, or something. I don't want like 20 pictures. Just make sure to combine it in one file and send it to me. There's many apps that are available in any smartphone. So my only humble request is, please don't send me individual pictures of each page. Please combine them in a PDF and then send them to me.
Right there, like in front of the proctor only, right, Prabhu?
Yeah, or the proctor can do it for you, or you can do it for the proctor, however you work it out with them.
Okay, Prabhu. And Prabhu, I had just one quick question, that suppose any chapter, suppose we take chapter 12. So we just write that it is about devotional service, and verse 13 to 19, it is described qualities, and then whole chapter talks about yoga later. When you say 1 point, means that's all we can write, right, in that?
Yes, Mataji, just 1 point from each chapter, the essence of it.
So would you say like 1 line, that's all, per chapter 1 line?
Yes.
Main essence. Okay. Like Prabhu, chapter 10, I'll just, like, suppose I write that this talks about Chaturshloki Bhagavad Gita, and it talks about opulences of Krishna. Is that sounds okay?
Perfect. Yes, that's what it is.
And Prabhuji, how much are the marks for this essay question?
I don't know. Yeah.
Because I think you answered for the 27 verses, it's 27 points. So 1 point each, right?
Yeah. I think I sent it out on the WhatsApp group, the breakdown.
I think it was 13.
13, okay.
13. 13.
Okay, thank you very much. We will be in touch, and Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank